Hey, welcome back to Try This from the Washington Post. I'm your host, Christina Quinn, and this is the third and final class in our course on gut health. In the last episode, we learned how a diet made of ultra-processed foods versus a diet made up of whole foods can affect how our gut microbiome uses energy. In this episode, you're going to hear again from our favorite scientist/dietitian, Dr. Karen Corbin of Advent Health Translational Research Institute, and from the ever-wise colon whisperer, aka gastroenterologist, Dr. Trisha Pasricha. They'll offer ways to make you feel healthier, less bloated, and even more satisfied without hurting your wallet. It's funny, I'm thinking about my supermarket, and as soon as I walk in, it's in the entryway, the vestibule, it's snacks, snack, soda. Then I go, and then the doors open, and the produce is straight ahead, but immediately to my left, it's like, there's like a little hey, donuts and cakes and cupcakes.
Yes, welcome.
And it's kind of like, hi, Christina. And I'm like, no, don't look at me. Yeah. It's like, but nope, eyes on the prize. Keep going straight.
Yeah, to the extent possible. And then you get to the checkout line and it's like all the candy bars and like everything else that you're like, oh yeah, this would hit really nice right now. And it's like by design that they don't put apples at the checkout line. Like they put the candy bars and the like kind of processed granola bars there.
Dr. Pasricha, the colon whisperer, is right. According to a study published this year in Nature Food, ultra-processed foods make up about 70% of the food found in grocery stores. 70%! But not all ultra-processed foods are created equal. I mean, there is a lot of food that comes in boxes.
Yeah, how do you tell the difference between ultra-processed, minimally processed, hardly processed at all, or whole foods? And I think a lot of us know, we know a whole food when we see it. We pick it up in the produce aisle. But then there's all this huge gray zone in between. Like the boxed, prepackaged foods, that's probably been heavily processed. But I think a simple way to think about it is if you look at the ingredient list and you could create this in your own kitchen, it would be a lot more work, but I could make this pasta sauce with all the ingredients I have in my pantry, then that's probably minimally processed. But if there's a bunch of chemicals in that pasta sauce, or you would have to go to some kind of industrialized kitchen to produce the shapes that are the shapes of a lot of breakfast cereals, then that's a sign that this has been even more processed. And and so that's one way to think about it.
Okay, so if you don't have the ingredients in your kitchen, it's probably been ultra-processed with additives like artificial sweeteners, food coloring, and emulsifiers. Emulsifiers stabilize ingredients that don't mix, like oils and liquids.
Guar gum is an emulsifier.
That's everywhere.
You see soy lecithin all over your packaged foods. And you see xanthan gum, sorbitan monostearate. These things are everywhere.
And it turns out emulsifiers can really do a number on your colon.
Your colon is this organ in your body that is lined with these epithelial cells. And normally these epithelial cells are the lining cells of your colon. They should be really tightly up against each other without a lot of room for something to slip past in them. Because everything you eat, you don't want that to just immediately enter your bloodstream. You want there to be a barrier. That mucus barrier is very important. It keeps the bacteria, the microbiome, which lives right on top of the mucus layer, from sitting there and attacking your actual lining cells all day. It sits on a mucus layer that's thick, it's protective for you, and it actually feeds them, and there's actually a lot of interaction between the mucus layer and the bacteria that's beneficial. So that's a happy world right there.
Yeah, right.
Emulsifiers in ultra-processed foods break down that mucus barrier that you have. When you break down that mucus barrier between your gut bacteria and your actual gut, actually the lining cells, you have bacteria that are in direct contact suddenly with you. You don't always like that. In fact, that can trigger inflammation in those cells. And actually what that does is cause bacteria to enter the colon, enter your bloodstream. And that's been shown to be the case with emulsifiers.
It does sound like, though, that there is a way to certainly make changes to improve the health, have those microbes flourish, thrive, party, get along really well together.
It's never too late to change your microbiome. Diet is the most important thing that we can do. When I counsel patients about how do we eat fewer ultra-processed foods, it's it's really hard to make a big change. Like I almost never tell patients, I couldn't do this myself, to say, all right, starting tomorrow, let's cut out all ultra processed foods from your life, and like see how you live for 2 weeks. So I usually tell someone, like, pick one meal, okay, rather than like, let's go cold whole foods for 30 days, which would be wonderful. And so start with breakfast and say, like, what is one substitute I might do that's healthier? And maybe it's going to be just as simple as, like, I'm going to fry my eggs in olive oil instead of canola oil. A great place to start.
Okay.
Or maybe instead of having, an ultra processed sausage with my breakfast, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to have some beans that morning. And if you can stick with a tiny substitution, but it's something you do every day, and you're going to do that for the next, 40, 50 years of your life, give or take, like, you've made a huge impact on your health by doing one small thing, rather than trying to make 100 big changes in 2 weeks, of which you're going to give all up, like, as soon as it's over, because it's all unsustainable.
That's right. You heard it from the doctor herself. Don't count out all your ultra-processed favorites tomorrow. Taking it slow is the path to keeping it sustainable. Your gut microbiome will thank you for it. After the break, we'll hear from Dr. Karen Corbin of Advent Health Translational Research Institute with some more practical tips. Now that Dr. Pasricha has given us her blessing to take baby steps when it comes to phasing out ultra-processed foods, we're now going to turn to Dr. Karen Corbin of Advent Health. She's a clinical research scientist and a dietitian who takes gut health very seriously. So we've got these gut microbes. We want to make them happy. What do you ask yourself when you wake up, or when you think about what your next meal is going to be?
So believe it or not, I do ask myself, have I fed my gut microbiome today? And I recommend that people do that for themselves, because it's just a mindset shift to get you to remember that, hey, I could make some upgrades. And look, I don't eat perfectly. I'm a dietitian, but I'm also a human. And there's a lot of tasty foods that don't feed the microbes. So this isn't about perfection. It's just about doing the best you can.
Right.
So if I feel like I haven't done such a good job, then if I was going to have a salad for dinner, I'll add some beans and I'll add some seeds and I'll just add some stuff that I'm like, here you go, microbes, you got it. So add more veggies, switch to whole grains. There's actually some very nice tasting preservative-free whole grain breads. There's some nice high resistant starch pastas out there. There's ways to like sneak it in a little bit.
A resistant starch is a carbohydrate that is not digested in the small intestine. It resists digestion. Instead, it ferments in the colon. In other words, resistant starches are a prebiotic. And as we learned in the first episode, prebiotics feed the microbes. What's cool is that you may already be eating resistant starches without even realizing it.
So it's beans, it's soy, it's even something like you cook a potato, but you eat it after it's cooled. So the resistant starch forms in the cooling process. Same with pasta. Cooled pasta is going to have more resistant starch.
This changes my relationship with potato and pasta salads. Rice is also in this category. Here's something else I didn't know. Barley and oats are already rich in resistant starches, meaning you don't need to wait for them to cool down to get the full benefits. But if you do, you're making them even more resistant. And one more note about oats, an oat note, if you will.
So you can take oatmeal and get the steel cut so it's bigger pieces, because bigger pieces of food also matters, because the bigger they start, the more chance there's going to be some travel all the way down the GI tract. So you do steel cut, you add some ground flax seeds, you add some fruit, fresh fruit, and some nuts. And now you went from very boring oatmeal to like a power-packed microbiome feeding breakfast.
So it sounds like just with a few simple steps, you can really amp up the fiber content and make your microbes much happier.
Yes.
And they will be maybe more gracious guests.
They will be more gracious guests. We found that people that consume a microbiome enhancer diet had higher levels of some of the hormones that help you feel full.
So really, at the end of the day, we just need to eat More veggies, fruits, whole grains, beans,
Yes.
nuts, legumes,
Yes.
lentils.
Yes.
Now I'm just listing things. But real talk, I mean, a lot of people rely heavily on ultra-processed foods. So how do we strike that balance?
So look, I understand processed foods being part of what we do. And I think it's just a matter of doing your best to reduce highly processed, shelf-stable foods and to increase some of these foods that feed the microbes. So perfection is, to me, never the goal, but it's just a matter of trying your best.
You know, when you say things like, ground flaxseed, some of that can be really pricey. Beans, I think, have remained pretty consistent as like a lower priced item. I guess no matter what, you could always just throw some beans on it. Just throw some beans on it.
Throw some beans on it.
Throw some beans on it. That should be your tagline. Just throw some beans on it.
Throw some beans on it. Put it on a t-shirt.
Okay, we gave you a high-fiber cornucopia of advice on what to do, but the internet is full of tips. So we'll close out with advice about cautions to take and where to be a little skeptical when it comes to gut health advice and supplements. Here's Dr. Pasricha again.
Hashtag gut health is a really popular topic. And a lot of my own patients come to me having heard the latest gut health trend online. I think what you see online, you should take with a grain of salt. So anyone who's posting something on social media as themselves, as an individual, they're not necessarily being held accountable by any additional authority, right?
Right?
Whereas what you might read on a hospital website, especially a big name academic center, that content that you're reading, one sort of has to meet the standards of that hospital. Their reputation is on the line, but it's probably been vetted by more than one person before it gets up there for accuracy and to make sure that they're not saying anything that's sort of not in sync with anyone else. And the other kind of websites that I would certainly trust would be the National Institutes of Health. They have a really wonderful section where they often address common myths. And then the second thing that I always tell my patients to sort of ask about is you see these trends and you start to notice Mayo Clinic, Washington Post, NIH, we're all saying the same thing. Yet this one person you've heard on social media is saying something very different. Ask yourself why. Why is it that all of these other figures are not saying that? And try, if you can, to go back to the data that we're talking about. Because I think on social media with gut health, sometimes you can say oh yeah, clinical studies have found. What does that word mean? What is a clinical study? It could be an industry-sponsored study that never got published in peer-reviewed form, or it could be this just incredible translational study that was just published in Cell. Who knows?
Right.
Sometimes it helps to go back to the actual source of what they're saying.
So what do people get wrong about the microbiome?
Probably the most common relevant thing to a lot of people is people think, okay, I need to fix my microbiome. I can fix it with a probiotic. If I take some probiotic supplement every day, that's going to fix my problem.
I'm guilty of that. I've totally thought that to myself.
Well, and probiotics are a complicated subject, but when we're talking about probiotic supplementation, such as in a capsule that's been industrialized, marketed, sold. Shelf-stable, unregulated, at least not in the way that medications are regulated, because they're a supplement, they're not medications. The data gets so murky about their benefit and whether those supplements even survive long enough to make it to your colon, whether the supplement you've eaten supplants the bacteria that you're hoping it will and then kind of, fertilizes and causes it to go. Very, very unclear. That said, there are some people who take probiotics and they love them. They swear by them. They say, I do feel better. I don't yank them from anyone's hands if they feel that they've gotten a benefit. The fact is, I just can't predict based on the data, based on what we know, who is the right person, who, what is the signature we need to look for that will tell us this person is really going to benefit from this particular probiotic, because all of us are individual. We all have a different microbiome. Certainly, it cannot be that we will all respond to the exact same formulation, right? But that's sort of how it's marketed and taken.
There's no one size fits all. Okay, now that's it for our course on the gut microbiome. But before I let you go, recap. If you're feeding your microbiome with good prebiotics like fiber, resistant starches, and veggies, you're fostering the microbes that already live in your gut. Doing that can lower risk of diseases down the line, and you could also feel fuller longer and experience less bloating. You can start making some small changes now, like replacing one ultra-processed food with a different whole food. And when it comes to supplemental probiotics, there's no real data out there that indicates it's effective. If you're listening to this and swear by your probiotic, groovy, that's great. We are not naysaying. Lastly, let's borrow a page from Karen Corbin's playbook. Every day ask yourself, have I fed my microbiome today? And if you haven't, throw some beans on it, or quinoa, or any prebiotic food of choice. The choice is yours. Before I let you go, just a heads up that we are launching a Try This newsletter. The things I learn in working on the show really do change how I think and do things day to day. I hear from family, friends, and listeners about what they're trying too. So I want to share more with you, and I want a better way to share what you find beneficial. So drop me a line or a voice recording about what changes you've made to feed your microbes. We could include your advice in the newsletter and a future episode of Try This. Record a voice memo or send me an email at trythis@washpost.com. Please be sure to give me your whole name and how you spell it. The email address again is trythis@washpost.com. Thank you for listening. Try This is produced and hosted by me, Christina Quinn, and Taylor White. The show's editors are Allison Michaels and Kanya Krit von Kitkajorn. Additional editing by Renita Jablonski. Charla Freeland is our video producer, and you can watch my full interview with Dr. Pasricha on YouTube. Sound design and mixing is by Ted Muldoon. Theme music is by Catherine Anderson. Show art is by Kati Huertas, with design editing from Christian Font and Greg Manifold.